Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The second part of the evening is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Maciej Witucki, President of Management Board, Work Service SA.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to be with you today. I'm here just to introduce the introduction, so it will be very short, I promise to you. Firstly, some technical messages I have had from the backstage, so please do not leave the place immediately after the dinner. It's not finished yet, so it's not the point for now. There will be fireworks and fountain show after the dinner. So once the dinner is finished, we should move to the terrace of the center, and there will be a great show, obviously as usual, and as usual originally and greatly organized by Mayor Dudkiewicz. So this is about the technical elements. Now for the introduction. I would just like to speak. I have my speech, but maybe I will forget about it for a minute. I would like to speak about solidarity, solidarność. Because I think that we have today Freedom Awards, and this freedom, we gain it in Poland, in the region, with this wonderful idea of solidarność, of the cooperation, of the human links between the populations in the country, but as well between countries, as we have heard about Lithuania, Eastern Germany, Slovakia, and others. So we have had this freedom because of the solidarity. And today in this very region, we will need again the solidarity to keep this freedom entire. We have the new challenges, we have the new visions and the new tensions, which are aiming eventually to divide us again. And not only us, if I may say about Poland as well, rich, healthy and free Western Europeans, but us larger Europeans under the threats and the pressures which are demanding for solidarność. So I think that this world, on top of the freedom, it's important to be underlined at every single of our meetings. So we have this great forum, and I would like to thank especially two people, because Mayor Dudkiewicz was thanked so many times, but I would like to thank again my dear friend Fred Kemp, who was from the very beginning of this area, who was courageous, brave, and who is still courageous and brave to believe that we'll close the budget every year. So thank you to the sponsors, by the way, and the new sponsors. Please sign up before the fireworks. And this great friend, it's not only an organizer, it's as well a spirit with all the team of Atlantic Council who's bringing the new ideas, and hopefully who will support this idea of freedom and solidarność with its importance for Europe, but as well for other countries which are fighting for freedom, and for freedom which may be gained with solidarity between all of us. The second person, which I'm introducing to the stage, is Governor Huntsman. A person who began his service career, sorry, here I have to read, in public service as a staff assistant to the President Reagan, so much beloved in Poland. You may see a statue of him in front of the US Embassy in Warsaw. He has then served each of the 4 US presidents since then in critical roles around the world. He had been supporting the Europe whole and free, this Europe which is today eventually under threat, this Europe which needs today to defend the freedom, needs a solidarity, a European solidarity, but as well the transatlantic solidarity. So I'm very happy that we have Governor Huntsman here, and we have him sharing with us some of his thoughts, some of his ideas, and his enthusiasm and his support to the freedom, but as well to the solidarność. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maciej. We were just back together with the voice of God. Now, I never thought I'd get a chance to meet her. What a pleasure that was. But Maciej, I just have to tell you what an honor it is to have you on our board and to have you representing the Atlantic Council here in Poland. You do a terrific job. Now, with an introduction like that, you might think I'm going to give a speech. I'm not going to give a speech. I just have a couple of things to say, namely to thank people who are responsible for getting us to where we are today. And right at the top, I want to single out Fred Kemp, who was up here earlier. Now, it's kind of a little-known secret that Fred and I attended rival high schools in the town of Salt Lake City in the state of Utah, if you can imagine that. And Fred and I came together with a thought in mind that if two rivals in the town of Salt Lake City could get along, we could bring peace to the rest of the world. That's the way in which we approach governance at the Atlantic Council, but Fred is backed up by some of the most extraordinary, talented, dedicated people I think I've ever worked with. And I just want to give them a big hand for the work they've done in putting this on. We draw at the Atlantic Council from a remarkable tradition that goes all the way back to 1961. This is as long as I've been alive. And to reflect just for a moment on the impact that the Atlantic Council has had on people, I had a conversation just as we were having the cocktail hour with Slawomir Kaidos, who is here. And he came up to me and he said, back in the old days, in the days of communism, I used to listen to Voice of America. And within Voice of America, I used to listen to the messages from the Atlantic Council. And they helped to change my life. And I stood there listening to this thinking the work that we are doing is important. We are defending freedom. People here who are recognizing and awarding tonight are going the extra mile to defend freedom against formidable odds and opponents. And the work here, I just have to tell you, is vitally important. And to have this community here tonight is just a remarkable treat. Mr. Mayor, you have a great town in Wroclaw. My wife put me on notice today as we were walking through the old town that she was ready to leave me so that she could stay here forever. Now, those are powerful words coming from my wife. I just want to also point out that we have some members of Congress from the United States here who have gone the extra mile to travel here. We're very grateful for that. We have Representative Jan Schakowsky from Chicago, who we are delighted to have. You've seen and heard from her already. Representative Ted Poe from the great state of Texas. It's a little dangerous when you talk about Texas in the United States because they don't know whether they're to be a nation state, separate and aside from the rest of us, or part of the Union. That's always in dispute. And my good friend, Senator Joe Manchin, who is here with his wife, Gail. Joe is among my closest friends. We were elected together as governors. And when he would visit Utah, I would interpret his English for people in Utah. When I was in West Virginia, he would interpret my English for people in West Virginia. It was always a model of collaborative work, Republicans and Democrats, always looking for solutions and ways to better solve problems, which is a great American tradition that sadly has been lost in the din and cacophony of politics most recently. So, also, we've had tonight United States Ambassador to Poland, Paul Jones, and I just want to recognize him for his service. He is truly one of our most distinguished diplomats from the United States. Before we press on with tonight's program, I'd also like to take a moment to recognize a past Freedom Award recipient who is also with us here in the audience, Juraj Kozminski, former Polish ambassador to the United States. And I want to thank him and so many of the rest of you for all that you have done ongoing to fight for freedom and democracy. So tonight, as we recognize the accomplishments of our remarkable roster of honorees, we also celebrate the cause of freedom, something that has seldom faced such significant and such profound setbacks. Our next honoree, who I've had a chance to get to know tonight, because we've been seated together. And Shaukat Aziz has been there with us on the other side, one of our famous members of the International Advisory Board at the Atlantic Council. Nigat Dad, who represents a strand of the very vision that we're here to celebrate tonight. While the digital era represents a host of opportunities, it also brings about new tools for repression, as governments and others use surveillance and harassment to target those who work for freedom. This is particularly true in societies that are struggling with massive social change and with ensuring freedom of expression for all. Nigat has sought to make it safe for women to be vocal on today's equivalent of the public square, the internet. She has promoted women's freedom of expression online and off, and fought against the prejudice that makes some believe that women have no role in our digital conversations. And we'll hear from her shortly. Our final award of tonight will go to the Syria Civil Defense, also known as the White Helmets, a group of almost 3,000 volunteers who are credited with saving over 40,000 lives over the course of the Syrian civil war, if you can imagine that kind of contribution to humankind. Tonight, we honor them for upholding the universal values of human rights in the face of overwhelming danger in Syria, and for their unwavering courage and steadfast commitment to the twin causes of freedom and democracy that has provided much-needed hope and an integral voice of reason within the international community throughout the entire Syrian conflict. What all our honorees tonight exemplify is how dedicated, passionate individuals can change the world, one person, in the name of freedom, and the countless lives they can touch in doing so, some unrecognized and unheralded. Thank you to all of them for the privilege of honoring them tonight, and thank you all for joining us for this remarkable conclusion to a hugely informative couple of days of discussion. I hope you enjoy the remainder of the program, and with that, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome one of our co-collaborators here for this program, Director of the Polish Institute of International Affairs, Sławomir Debski, to the stage. Thank you all so very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor and privilege to be at this stage. It is for the first time for me, and it is very, very great privilege to be here and to say a few words to you during the ceremony of Atlantic Council Freedom Awards. I had, of course, a prepared speech, but during the dinner I changed it twice or 3 times, and then I decided that I don't need it. I would like to thank, first of all, the Atlantic Council for bringing the Freedom Awards to Wrocław, to Poland. I would like to thank the Wrocław and the mayor of the city for hosting us in this splendid surroundings. I would like to congratulate all awardees of 2016 Atlantic Council Freedom Awards. I would like to thank for their contribution to the better world. Syria Civil Defense, Night Dad, host Telchik, who I know from our efforts to bring Russians behind the negotiation table. And however, I didn't agree with, in all instances, in all cases, with Horst, but his class, his diplomatic skills were always appreciated. And I would like to congratulate Father Maciej Ziemba for this award. I know Father Ziemba for his writing and his contribution to the better understanding how the relationship between business and politics should look like. The ethical questions were always high into further gender agenda. And this brings me to the last issue I would like to share with you. In the context of Russia's aggression against Ukraine, when the weaknesses of the state were used, when lack of transparency were used as a weapon against the independent nations and its aspiration, we need to create the coalition leading towards more transparent world, which would be much more safer, much more democratic, and much more reliable. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank all of you for your contributions to the Wroclaw Global Forum this year. I believe we all together created a coalition for a good purpose of freedom, transparency, and better understanding of each other. Thank you very much for this contribution.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Shaukat Aziz, former Prime Minister of Pakistan.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real privilege for me to be here. But before I start, let me pay my respects to all the guests here, and particularly, we have two members of the US Congress here, Congresswoman Jan Shaukat, Congressman Ted Poe, and of course, from the Senate, Senator Joe Manchin. Welcome to our event today, and it's a real privilege to have you here. Governor Huntsman, Chairman of the Atlantic Council, Fred Kemp, the President and CEO, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's clearly a privilege for me to be here tonight to talk about our next awardee. Nigat Dad is an activist on digital freedom. She comes from my home country, Pakistan, but I must say I had never met her before. She's an activist, a reformer, a proactive person who has raised the voice of digital freedom in our country. She is a single mother and is responsible for taking care of a young son in addition to all her other responsibilities. She has institutionalized her efforts to fight for freedom and earn the freedom which is needed on the web by setting up her foundation, which is the Digital Rights Foundation. This foundation has brought together hundreds of people across the country, if not thousands. And wherever there is any impediment to open communication, expression of ideas, she stands up and defends and supports these people. She also is a keen activist on the women front. In Pakistan now, women's role and their status in society is ahead of men, but at least equal to men. We had a prime minister, the former prime minister, Benazir Bhutto, who became the chief executive of the country. And in every walks of life now, you will see women shoulder to shoulder with the men in terms of management responsibilities and, of course, other responsibilities. I say this because many of you have not visited our country, and the impressions people have may be a bit different. That's why I'm particularly pleased that today we are gathered to recognize a fighter, a person who's got a lot of conviction about what she does. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in congratulating and welcoming Nigat Dad.
by conveying my warmest thanks and appreciation to the Atlantic Council for honoring me with the Freedom Award and for providing me with this wonderful opportunity to meet others that are working to promote freedom and personal liberty across the world, putting their lives at risk for a cause that is greater than ourselves. Over the past quarter century, we have borne witness to rising social tensions and economic uncertainty, global conflicts that cause millions of refugees to flee those same conflicts for a better life for their children. Religious extremists and the far right are on the rise, exploiting the fear and insecurity of many. Ours is an unstable world. Moved to defend ourselves from domestic and foreign terrorism, we must ensure these and the other principles of Universal Declaration and the rights to freedom of expression and privacy, amongst others, are respected. It is understandably difficult to maintain a balance in the wake of violent attacks worldwide. The rush to give broader powers of surveillance and detainment, the need to control avenues of information, is a reflexive reaction that we must fight. The reality is that we already live in a world where citizens are subject to their personal data being collected, where the website that they visit and the conversations that they have are monitored without their consent or their knowledge. In an attempt to catch potential terrorists, mass surveillance and invasion of privacy has not discouraged terrorism, and that we have seen across the world. Instead, there has directly or indirectly been a chilling effect on the democratic discourse and political actions that are vital to a healthy society worldwide. British Muslim children in Great Britain, for example, can now expect to be questioned by the police if they are critical of their own government's actions. Healthy criticism of the state, vital in a democracy society, can now result in citizens being monitored and questioned by their own national security agencies. Governments worldwide continue to discuss the possibility of banning certain websites or making access to them heavily restricted, ensuring that accessing such websites, whether out of curiosity or for approved academic research, can result in arrests. If the right to security overpowers the right to life and liberty, if our values are subject to overly broad scrutiny, intrusion, and lack of respect, then what is being defended? By criminalizing forms of expression, unintentionally or otherwise, we risk pushing people into the welcoming arms of extremists. Covering our eyes, ears, and mouths will not protect us from evil, but it will make it harder for people to be involved in the valuable discourse that is at the heart of social and financial progress. If we cannot hold the state apparatus accountable, we run the risk of penalizing millions of citizens simply for being curious or for connecting with their fellow global citizens. Freedom to information is a fundamental right, one that matters online just as much as it does offline. Denying and criminalizing one weakens the others, limits our liberties. We are living in a time of global unease, uncertainty, and conflict, but we are also living in a time of greater solidarity in the face of oppression and censorship. Security must not come at the cost of liberty, of democracy, of the rights of citizens. And we must work towards ensuring that security and civil rights can coexist. Civil liberties must not be casualties in the fight against extremism, for without them, democracy cannot prosper. Once again, thank you so much for this award and for inviting me to this wonderful event. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Frederick Hoff, Director of the Atlantic Council Rafik Hariri Center for the Middle East.
Ladies and gentlemen, for over 5 years, Syrian civilians have suffered in agony. They've been on the bullseye in a war where civilians have been the principal victims, and their victimization has not been accidental. This has been a war in which a government has inflicted mass homicide on its own citizens. A government sworn to protect its people has instead targeted them. It has inspired similar behavior by some of its opponents. It has given rise in Syria to another abomination, the so-called Islamic State. The world has paid little heed to the apocalypse that is Syria. It is as if 250,000 dead, 5 million fleeing the country, 7 million displaced internally, and a lost generation of children is, taken collectively, someone else's problem. Yes, we pay attention when the humanity hemorrhaging from Syria comes to us for shelter and for a chance to live in safety and dignity. We define ourselves by how we respond. The Atlantic Council and its Rafiq Hariri Center for the Middle East are trying to right something that is wrong, to shine a light on a humanitarian catastrophe, to illuminate its harsh political consequences, and to point the way toward practical policy changes to protect civilians and to promote peace. Tonight, we focus on brave Syrians who will not let the indifference of the world stop them from saving lives. The White Helmets, Syria Civil Defense, have stood for courage, decency, mercy, and honor in a conflict often devoid of each. This all-volunteer team is not political, but because a government has deliberately and remorselessly targeted its citizenry, the White Helmets must concentrate their work in neighborhoods assaulted from the skies by the Syrian Air Force. Recently, 5 White Helmet volunteers were killed when their local headquarters was bombed by regime or Russian aircraft. They are most vulnerable, however, when trying to rescue others. Government aircraft often return to the scene of the original crime during rescue operations to strike again, the infamous double tap. This organization of some 3,000 has saved between 40 and 50,000 lives of their fellow citizens while losing 120 of its own members. In a conflict defined by horror, heartbreak, and death, the White Helmets have stood for decency, hope, and life. Earlier this year, the president of the Atlantic Council joined with members of Congress and others to nominate Syria Civil Defense for the Nobel Peace Prize. Words, however, cannot adequately describe the inspired work of these brave women and men. Here are some images that depict the enormity of what they're doing. Ladies and gentlemen, accepting the Freedom Award on behalf of the White Helmets are Mr. Ra'id Saleh and Mr. Farouk El Habib. Please welcome them to the stage.
السلام عليكم، مساء الخير. أنا آسف أنني لا أستطيع التكلم الإنجليزية، سأتكلم بالعربي وصديقي سيقوم بالترجمة إن شاء الله. شكرا لكم على استضافة في هذه المدينة الرائعة، ونشكر المجلس الأطلنطي لتكريمنا بجائزة الحرية التي تعني لنا الكثير، لأننا أبناء الشعب السوري الذي قدم تضحيات هائلة في سبيل هذه الحرية. الدفاع المدني السوري الخوذ البيضاء هم متطوعون مدنيون من أبناء الشعب السوري الذي ثار على الدكتاتورية ب 2011، ولكن عندما وجه الشعب السوري بالبراميل المتفجرة والأسلحة الكيماوية والإرهاب والسيارات المفخخة والذبح بالسكاكين، هم لم يختاروا طريق الموت، بل اختاروا طريق الحياة، اختاروا الطريق الذي يصنع الأمل لسوريا وللسوريين في المستقبل، في مستقبل مشرق. بدأ عمل الدفاع المدني في 2013 من مبادرات فردية لإنقاذ الناس من تحت الأنقاض. بدأنا العمل في مدينة حلب وإدلب، ومن ثم انتشرنا لنعمل في أكثر من 8 محافظات سورية. لقد وصل عددنا اليوم أكثر من 3000 متطوع، أنقذنا أكثر من 50,000 إنسان من تحت الأنقاض. نحمل رسالة الحب والسلام لجميع السوريين، نعمل بحيادية بتقديم خدماتنا لكل السوريين، نعطي الحرية للأطفال وللنساء وللرجال من تحت الأنقاض. الخوذ البيضاء يعملون على تحرير الإنسان من أنقاض الدمار، ولذلك نحن فخورون بجائزة الحرية العالمية، ونتمنى أن يتوحد العالم لتحرير الإنسان من أنقاض الدكتاتورية والإرهاب. شكرا لكم.
Good evening, everybody. We thank you very much for honoring us and the Syrian Civil Defense, the White Helmets, and hosting us in this wonderful city. The Freedom Award means a lot to us as sons of the Syrian people who sacrificed a lot in the struggle to achieve freedom in Syria. The Syria Civil Defense are sons and daughters of this great people who have been struggling now for 5 years, and as a grassroots organization emerged on the ground inside Syria with now more than 3,000 volunteers in 8 governorates, The White Helmets have rescued more than now 50,000 lives of people. The White Helmets are actually, we believe, are freedom fighters because they work to free lives of people from under the rubble of destruction. After the Syrian people started the uprising demanding freedom, the dictatorial regime faced the people with barrel bombs and chemical weapons and all types of violence. And then later on, extremist groups faced that people with knives and killing and car bombs. But those volunteers, the rescue workers, they made their decision to work unarmed, purely humanitarian, to send a message of hope and a message of life for everyone impartially. And as freedom fighters working to free the people from under the rubble of destruction, we hope that all the world be united and stand to free humans from under the rubble of dictatorship and terrorism. Thank you.
In a moment, we'll invite you all to join us for a fantastic fountain and light show on the back terrace. But first of all, I want to invite all of tonight's awardees and speakers and introducers, along with previous honorees who are with us tonight, to join me on the stage. So if you could all come up on the stage. This family photo is part of our annual tradition, and so please join me. And now I do want to salute one person in particular while you're all coming up here. So please do continue to come up. Fran Burwell, the Executive Vice President of the Atlantic Council, the leader of all of our work on the European Union, and one of two people that worked at the Atlantic Council before I got there that are still there, and a real hero of this event and so many other things we do. And I want to pass to her to thank our incredible team for this weekend's events.
Thanks very much, Fred. Doing the Wroclaw Global Forum and the Freedom Awards is really a highlight of our year. And this year it was especially good for me because we have such a crackerjack team that I was actually able to watch some of the panels. So I actually want to, and those of you who've organized things will know how difficult that sometimes can be. So I want to thank our team, Sarah Biedenbau and Jorn Fleck, Michał Kobosko, our director in Poland, and his assistant, Joanna Nalawacek, our executive team, Damon Wilson and David Ensor, Julie Varghese and her event staff, Iveta Kruma, Paul Paliga, Vicente Garcia, Kate Seeger, and many, many others. Nicole Hobbs, Victoria Langton, Vridi Sujan, Megan Poole, Geisha Gonzalez, Susan Haig, Lawrence Parenza, and Max Chapersky. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Fran. Thank you to this team. This is why tonight's Freedom Awards are not just a celebration, but this is a call to action. Please, all awardees, come to the center of the stage. Please applaud all of them, and we hope to see you again next year. Enjoy the show. Thank you.